Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the sort of crazy, tortuous plea hearing for Hunter Biden yesterday that really went kind of off the tracks in two different ways and two different directions. So I'm going to have to give you a little criminal procedure here, but not too much. Anyway, typically, you've worked out a plea agreement with the government as a defendant, and you come before a judge, and the judge applies what's called Rule 11, which sets out a whole procedure for plea agreements and a litany that a judge has to ask the defendant. Have you been using any drugs? Is this completely voluntary? Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? And it turns to the government and says, what would you prove if we went forward? All by way of determining if the plea is kosher on a few different grounds, but it's normally a very routine affair. Yesterday was anything but. It kind of went off. There were two major hiccups. I think one of them will be of continuing importance. But here's what happened. So they work out this deal, the government and Hunter Biden. And the guts of the deal is he's going to plead guilty to two misdemeanor tax counts for failing to have paid his taxes. He's since paid them back with penalties, but he didn't pay them. And then there's also a charge. All of this comes from a lost period when he is heavily involved with drugs and crack cocaine and addicted and completely acting criminal, but also total lost cause. During that time, he got a gun. And to get the gun, you have to say, I'm not using drugs. And he did say that. And that was a lie. And it's a crime to lie on an application for guns. However, the Republicans are making a big thing about this, but it's not a lie. That crime is something the DOJ basically never prosecutes unless the person who lies to get the gun perpetrates another crime with it. Hunter Biden didn't do that. In fact, he had the gun for a couple weeks until his girlfriend threw it away. So it's a suitable case for what's called a diversion agreement. And under that agreement, he's technically charged, and it sort of hovers over him for a year, but he keeps his nose clean and doesn't get into more trouble, and everything then goes away. That's also all fine and nothing too controversial yet. Okay, that's the table that was set when they went into court. First hiccup that happened is the judge asked, is there anything else? She sees that this diversion and the tax counts are in there. Says, is there anything else that the government is agreeing to dismiss? And the government says no. And that takes Hunter Biden's lawyers by surprise. They thought, anyway, that the government also was saying that they weren't going to bring any charges based on Hunter Biden's business dealings in China and the Ukraine around 2014. And maybe, in general, there was both kind of wishful thinking on both sides, a real failure to put everything clear in the agreement, because the government says, no, we could bring these other things. That takes Biden's attorneys by surprise, and the Biden's attorney says in court, this is now null and void. So the whole thing, all of a sudden, to kind of gasp in the courtroom, just is completely on the rocks. The judge at that point says, look, go back and figure this out. Obviously, you guys don't quite agree. And they did go back and talk for about 10 minutes. And during those 10 minutes, Hunter Biden at this point is stuck. Probably the way things stood were technically they're not promising to not investigate a possible FARA claim is what it would be, failure to register as an agent, same thing that Paul Manafort was convicted of. they were kind of, I think, over relying maybe on informal assurances by the government that they didn't have any plan, but wasn't couldn't be in the agreement. And if they were assuming it was, they were just over assuming, and that was their mistake. Also, the government's mistake. In general, here, the government and Biden are both a little sloppy. And a little unusual, and everyone thinks maybe the judge is kind of whatever, biased, a Trump appointee. But I think the judge was not. I think the judge did sensibly what she should have. So they come back now and they say, okay, it also includes. The investigation is ongoing, as they had said at the time. And so we're not promising not to bring other claims. At that point, the judge talks to Biden about where did you do business, Burisma, and the like. This is all, I think, the most important offshoot of the hearing. I will get back to it. The second one is the one that got more focus. And what happened there is, again, sloppiness really by the government and Biden. Biden wanted an assurance that they weren't going to, as long as he kept his nose clean, they wouldn't bring these claims. It would just be the tax stuff. So they put it all together. And normally you would just have a diversion agreement that is separate and that has nothing to do with a judge. It's just an agreement between government and sort of putative defendant, or somebody who could ripen into a full defendant. You inform the court, but the government talks to the defendant and says, cuts a deal. We won't do this, and it's up to us. This will be the exercise of our prosecutorial discretion. Instead, they folded it all in and included language that isn't a diversion agreement, basically saying if you don't keep your nose clean, all bets are off and charges can still be brought. But it was folded in to the plea agreement that went before the court and written kind of loosely. So it looked as if it might actually, the judge might have to play a role in saying whether Biden fails to live up to the diversion agreement and whether he therefore should be charged. And she properly said, look, I've never seen this before. This is bizarre. It's not my job to decide when the prosecution and the Department of Justice charge things. You can't, it's a weird separation of powers issue. In fact, I want you guys to brief it, but it seems to me, if you give me a role in this diversion agreement, you're asking me to play prosecutor, exercise prosecutorial discretion. It doesn't work like that. And at that point, the plea and the agreement are off. They haven't consummated it. Biden has to plead. How do you plead, Mr. Biden? Not guilty, because at this point, there's no agreement protecting him. And now they're going to brief and they're going to figure it out, write it more cleanly, and have it not have any intimation that the judge might have to get involved, etc. So that was, again, kind of a little bit of sloppy work by government and Biden, but that'll all get settled. Back to the first thing, however, to the extent it's still open to bring a claim under the Foreign Agent Registration Act, that leaves the kind of stray conduct of Hunter Biden in 2014, 2015 at issue. And Republicans think that they have witnesses who will say that Hunter Biden invoked his dad's name on different occasions, things that really shouldn't matter if they're true, and it's all hearsay and very remote. But now that is the possible subject of a continuing criminal investigation, at least so long as it is, I think it really breathes life into these efforts and gives some momentum to the plain lie of, the Biden crime family, which they actually want to use, in a sort of whataboutism when Trump is indicted. Trump, they've alleged, but here the Biden corruption, etc. And so I think it really does perpetuate a false, deceptive, and sort of dangerous in the sense that it's supposed to be a response to these much more serious charges about Trump. That this dynamic gets kept alive, and including possible statements that Hunter Biden made in 2014, and who really cares, and what does it say about Joe Biden and the like. But it'll be something that they can really go to town on. Okay, so long-winded and legal, but basically Rule 11, they come in for the plea, a little bit sloppy, and the judge makes them clarify that some stuff is still under investigation, and then makes them will make them go back and make clear that she has no role in the diversion. So it's all like funky, and everyone's paying attention. It's on again, off again, on again, off again, but it will be on again, and it will go down about as it was supposed to, except it will leave open for continuing political controversy for some time anyway. The prosecutor, David Weiss, is supposed to testify in front of Congress in a couple months. You would think at that point his investigation would be all closed. But as long as it's technically open, it makes this bogus political controversy that they'll invoke when Trump is indicted more viable. So that's what happened yesterday. It was messy, but it all got back to center. It wasn't the judge's fault. It was basically the department and Biden for not being clear enough, and maybe both sides having wishful thinking. But a kind of byproduct of it is to keep alive some incendiary rhetoric that the MAGA right will use to say, oh, the Biden family is corrupt. And that's because it's false, and because they use it to try to counter what's being said about Trump. That's too bad. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.